As search evolves, driven by AI, LLMs, and semantic understanding, tracking performance using keywords just isn't enough. Search engines are getting smarter, and they care less about the exact words on the page and more about the entities your content is about. This is why Schema app is so excited to introduce Entity Performance Analytics, the reporting tool that puts entities at the center of your SEO strategy. Let's dive in. Entity Performance Analytics, or EPA, combines the entities identified by Schema app's entity linking feature with real-time performance data from Google Search Console. The result is a complete view of how your entities are performing in search across clicks, impressions, and click-through rate. Upon activation, Entity Performance Analytics will provide 3 months of historical data. The date range can be modified by opening up the control panel and selecting the desired dates from the calendar. Once selected, the date range will apply to all of the data within the dashboard. The Entity Performance Overview section contains information about coverage and aggregated performance data for specific entities. The Entity Coverage section shows how well covered your website is with externally linked entities for web pages that have Google Search Console performance data within the date range defined within the controls. This section is where you can find the total URLs from Google Search Console, the number of entities identified, and the number of URLs with and without entities. This coverage information is also represented with a speedometer visualization. The Entity Performance Overview section provides an aggregated view of the clicks, impressions, and click-through rate of URLs where a specific entity was identified. You can use this data to understand how each entity has performed over the time period set in the control panel. The entities are listed in descending order of URL count. However, all columns can be sorted by ascending or descending order by clicking on the column header. This section also contains 3 word clouds to provide a visual representation of the clicks, impressions, and click-through rate of the top 100 entities by URL count. You can hover over any entity name to see a rounded count of that entity's performance for the related metric. The entity clouds can be helpful for surfacing insights into your entity performance data that may not immediately be evident by looking at the table. For example, customer relationship management has really high metrics for clicks and impressions, but not so much for click-through rate, and the top entities for click-through rate don't seem to show up quite as evidently in the impressions and clicks. This can signal an opportunity to double-click on the URLs where these entities have been identified to get a better understanding of how the content on those pages could be impacting performance. This is where the Performance by Entity section, which is found below, can come in really handy. You can use this section to compare the performance of individual entities over time. Start by selecting the entities you want to analyze. The tool will select all entities by default, but for the best experience, we recommend selecting between 2 and 10 entities to start. Once you've selected the entities of interest, click Apply. These aggregated entity performance blocks show a summary of the total aggregated clicks and impressions for those selected entities. Keep in mind that many URLs will contain multiple entities, so clicks and impressions may be double counted for URLs that contain more than one of the selected entity names. The entity performance graphs show the clicks, impressions, and click-through rate of those selected entities over the date range you've applied in the controls. Hover over any date for a breakdown of the performance of the selected entities for that date. And if you're interested in individual URL performance, take a look at the Entity Identification by URL table, where you'll find a list of URLs where each entity was identified, along with the performance data for the date range selected in the controls. URL lists for given entities can be expanded or collapsed. The row containing the name of the entity shows the aggregated clicks, impressions, and average click-through rate for all the URLs where that entity has been identified. Tables and visualizations can be maximized and minimized, and exported as CSV, or, in the case of tables, exported to Excel. The reporting provided by the Entity Performance Analytics tool empowers you to answer questions around engagement and coverage in a way that centers entities as opposed to keywords, and you can leverage these reports to support data-driven decision-making for your SEO and content strategies. So get in touch with us today to see how you can leverage our Entity Hub solution.